Let's continue these developments now and speak to governance expert and University of the Free State's Public Administration and Management Department's Dr. Harlan Cloete, who joins us live now. Thank you so much for your time, Dr. Cloete. I mean, we just heard from the NFP. A lot of people were waiting to hear just which direction they would go in the province of KwaZulu-Natal, for example, and looking at the dynamics that are currently at play in that particular province. The legislature is sitting tomorrow. I wonder if you were able to get some of that briefing, and what do you make of their decision now to work with the ANC, the DA, as well as the IFP?
Good evening to you, and good evening also to the viewers. You know, it's interesting what was said. You know, KwaZulu-Natal have always been a very volatile province, and what's interesting there is that MK party, they're the majority party there. And so those the parties that didn't, they're the biggest majority in the party, but they can't control. And so it would be the coalition of minorities that would govern that province, and that could lead to interesting dynamics in the province, because the voters may very well say that although the MK did not win the majority, they express the will of the people and that they support the MK. And so the MK in opposition is going to be interesting.
And of course, when you then look at this dynamic as well, there's also the ANC in that province that is also very bruised when you look at this particular result, and even looking at its own leadership that now also took a serious beating at the polls. How much of a back foot are they in that province?
I think the ANC is also divided. Look, I think there are two schools of thought within the ANC. There's one school of thought that favors, because MK comes from the ANC, so it's a coalition of the wounded. And so there's a faction in the ANC that will feel comfortable with this arrangement, and there's another faction in the ANC would want to work closer with the MK party. So whether the ANC, whether the centre can hold within the ANC, I think that is the big question. And so the next the next 6 months is going to be very interesting in South Africa, in KwaZulu-Natal, and in politics, as South Africans get used to this new normal.
And speaking of the ANC and the centre, you know, you look at developments, for example, within the party over the years. Some of it, for you know, you're looking at COPE, you're looking at the UDM, you're looking at the EFF, now the MK party. These are all splinter groups. So would you say that how they got to this particular moment was because of one particular moment, or was it a number of developments that got to the ANC where it finds itself right now with the electorate?
If you look at liberation parties, you know, all over the world, when the party that brings liberation, that gets into government, their lifespan is normally between 40 and 50 years. For the ANC, that decline has happened over the last decade or the last 20 years. You know, we've had 30 years of ANC government in South Africa, and that decline started with the UDM, and then COPE, and then EFF, and then MK. And so it has been that gradual decline of the party, and a lot of that has got to do with the economic direction of the party. If you look at the last two, the EFF is saying that black people continue to vote, have political power, but they remain poor. I think the MK has fashioned themselves around that narrative as well, of saying that radical economic transformation, and what this country desperately needs is economic inclusion. They are not entirely wrong in their analysis of saying that if you look at the statistics, the World Bank confirmed that South Africa continues to be the most unequal country in the world. If you look at our education system, it is not entirely free and equitable. And so there are structural problems wrong with our economy, and the economic policies of the ANC have not really favored the poor. It addresses the symptoms, but it has not really looked at the core, the structural nature of poverty.
And look, speaking about, you know, issues around inequality, for example, Alan Winde is now back as the Premier of the Western Cape, and he says he's planning to continue with his plan around service delivery, but that is a province where a number of people still say that it still tells a tale of two different, you know, economies, that you then look at Cape Town, it's still a tale of two cities.
No, exactly. You know, exactly that. You know, if you ask, it depends who you ask. The DA have got a very good track record in the Western Cape in terms of running a very effective government, in terms of there's clean audits, there is, and some would argue, what's the use of clean audits if there's dirty streets? So they've got a track record of institutional governance. And so you can't fault them. But in terms of in terms of efficiency, in terms of effectiveness, where they deliver those services, the criticism is that depends who you ask. If you go to Khayelitsha, Gugulethu, that you will see that the levels of service is not at the same level in the more affluent parts of Cape Town. And I think that is the challenge of the DA in the Western Cape, is to be more inclusive and to say, when it comes to service delivery, that it delivers equitably. And so you've got an effectiveness problem in the Western Cape in particular, where those services are delivered. And that has been the main criticism of the DA.
And Dr. Cloete, I hope then we speak again, because as you say, critical 6 months lie ahead for South Africa, and there's a lot to be said, even about the composition of the ANC, the DA, as well as the IFP, and much has been said, of course, in the public domain. But do appreciate your time this afternoon. That was a governance expert and University of the Free State's Public Administration and Management Department's Dr. Harlan Cloete.